obviously you're filming. Make sure it's in tune. Kind of thing?
Sure.
All right, you want to switch guitars?
Sure.
What can I say about Dr. Will Renshaw besides the fact that he's been our family dentist for over 20 years?
Well, you do that to me all the time.
You like to talk as much as I do.
No, but I remember I was like in the chair and you got your hands in my mouth and we were talking about aging before you started working on me. And then you go, oh, do you know about the blue zones? And I'm going, I know blue zones.
Well, I can tell you he's a bundle of energy.
My assistants prohibit me from having more than one cup of coffee because if I have more than one cup of coffee, my energetic personality becomes like this. And I'm like, come on, guys, we got to go. We got stuff to do.
They let you have a cup of coffee in the morning.
1 in the morning.
But they know when you've had a cup of coffee at lunch.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a luthier, which means that he makes stringed instruments, specifically guitars.
But you're still a luthier.
Well, a luthier. Not to be confused with Lutheran. And that would be okay too, but still.
What do you think about that word?
Luthier?
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but it's a cool word, right?
I love it.
Fortunately, Will found time to invite me into his workshop, where we talked about how he got into making guitars and the joy he gets from personalizing each one.
So we're in your...
We're in my strange kind of sanctuary, my cave. Right. So we're in my workshop. This is in my basement. When we bought the house, my wife looked at the kitchen and I said, no. Where's the workshop going to be? And she's like, well, down there somewhere. So that was our compromise in this house, right? So it's in the basement. All the stuff got moved in. There are tools from a lot of different eras. A couple of pieces were my father's. I grew up in my dad's wood shop, and he was a classic tinkerer, right? So if something got broken, he could fix it, which is where I think any talent I have came from. But when he decided he was kind of tired of tinkering and downsized, I got a lot of his tools. So some of the tools are mine, some of my father's, some of my grandfather's. I kind of live down here a lot of the time. I will say that I have a little intercom system that when the daughters of the wife say, Dad, you need to come upstairs and do something, they press the button and I hear the voices in my head and go see what's going on.
That's pretty good.
So so everything, it gets so kind of organized down here, and the instruments kind of start from there.
So I'm thinking if you make a guitar, you have to be able to play. You have to be a musician.
Kinda. Well, that's the reason.
So when did you start playing guitar?
I got my first guitar out of a dumpster when I was 11. I grew up in Louisville, and Louisville once a year has this big trash pickup. You can put anything out on the curb you want, and Louisville collectors will pick it up. And as a kid, I'm riding my bike and I find this guitar. I took it home. I said, Mom, I really want to play this. So we took it to the local music store and the guy said, okay, I'll see what I can do with this. And I started studying with a friend of the family who was a teenager and a rock guitar player, let's put it that way. I started from there.
So was that an electric guitar?
That was an acoustic.
Okay.
It was not so, it was a real piece of junk, purchased out of the Sears catalog originally.
Yeah.
Which was fine. You used to be able to do that. Sears had catalogs, you could buy stuff and it got shipped, right?
Right.
It was awful, and very quickly, my teenage guitar teacher went to my mom and dad and said, the kid is actually shows a real love of this. You probably need to buy him something he can really play. Went down with my dad, spent $175 on my first acoustic guitar, and I thought my dad was going to pass out because it was a lot of money, right?
Yeah, obviously.
And I still have that guitar. It has been played to death, and it has unfortunately been repaired and repaired and repaired just to see if I could repair it over the years. At one point, the face of it was smashed right through here, literally. So it's held together with popsicle sticks from the back. But I learned a lot about early repair because...
It was smashed when you got it?
Oh, no. It got smashed later.
Oh, you had this concert where you just smashed people over the head with your guitar?
No. It unfortunately had a pop bottle, unfortunately stuck through it by one of my younger brother's friends, actually. To which he gave it to me, like, I offer this up. Can we fix it? Oh my God, I hope so, right? Because it's my only guitar. But I learned a whole lot about repair because I didn't have any money. I grew up in my dad's wood shop, like I said, and he would say, well, I don't know how this is supposed to work, but I bet we could fix it if we did this, this, and this. And that's how I started. So from there to high school, huge introduction from rock music into jazz. And then I started studying with actual real guitar teachers, jazz players in Louisville who were actually playing out on weekends, which was great. I worked with a professional teacher named Bill Edwards, who was a great teacher and an amazing player. From there to college and playing in UK's jazz bands. And the great thing about playing at UK was there weren't any guitar players, so I actually got to play, because had I had any competition, I would have been not so good enough to play, right? But I got to work with a huge number of horn players. The great thing about horn is it's a whole different thought process, right, than six-string players. So you start to think differently. And the horn players would introduce you to a certain musician to listen to. There was one person at UK who was director of one of the programs at UK named Chester Grundy. And I could go to Mr. Grundy and say, hey, I listened to this album, where do I go from here? And he would give me 10 different musicians to listen to. And Vince DiMartino, who was the director of events, who was my first jazz band instructor, incredibly nice guy, intimidated me to death because he was such an amazing player, right? And he was such a great teacher and such a great director, but he expected a lot from you.
Yeah.
So if you showed up at jazz band with a big ensemble not ready to play, you were going to hear about it in front of all your other musical cohorts, right? So I played my charts really carefully and said, yes, Mr. Martino. But I learned a huge amount about jazz and about playing. Now, at that same time, I was lucky enough to play in dance bands. I played and paid my way through college and dental school by playing on weekends. Sometimes 3 or 4 nights a week, depending on what kind of band, but pretty much every weekend year-round, I played in dance bands. Now, a dance band is a wedding reception band, a corporate party band. Now, the great thing about that, being a very poor college kid, I got paid really well for playing those kind of gigs as opposed to playing bar gigs. And bar gigs were fun because you could play the music, any kind of music you wanted. But it didn't pay anything.
You don't make any.
You made no money.
Right.
Wedding receptions are different. Corporate parties are different. You make really good money, and by the way, you get to eat. Very important.
Especially for a poor college
yes,
student.
That's right. Buffet, I am so happy, right? I get to play, I get to pay, and I get to eat. So I got to play every weekend constantly in dance bands and also in jazz groups. My favorite gig I played a lot of the way through college was at Joe Bologna's pizza place.
Oh, yeah.
So Joe Bologna, big music fan. And a great guy. Now, if you've ever met Joe Bologna kind of sounds like Marlon Brando's godfather. Hi, guys, I'll make you some pizza. I want you to play Straight No Chaser before the night's over. I want to hear some Monk tonight. And he was great about that and such a nice guy. But in Joe Bologna's modern pizza place, it's a converted church.
Right.
In the center of it, they took the church and there's a second layer.
Yeah.
Well, I got to play with a quartet every Wednesday night, a jazz quartet, at Joe Bologna's. Now, we didn't get paid anything, but we got to eat as much pizza as we could. Buddy, we put a hurting on Mr. Bologna. I am 100% sure that us four guys ate more than he would have ever paid us in pizza, right? So I really got all through college to build my chops, as musician calls it, right? Playing these jazz tunes, and we could play anything we wanted at Joe Bologna's. It was all jazz, from Miles Davis to Charlie Parker to John Coltrane to Pat Metheny, for the modern guys.
Right.
Anything we wanted. A lot of times Miles Osland played those whole shows and kind of booked that. And he would say, okay, good night, I'm going to challenge you guys. We're going to play 3 tunes you've never heard. And I'm not going to tell you how to play them. Go. Here's the chart. Go.
Wow.
So much fun.
Yeah.
And for a young musician, amazing. I got to eat all the pizza I wanted, great pizza. Got to talk to Joe Bologna, who was such a nice guy, right? And I got so challenged, right? So all along, I get to play, I get to build my chops. I got paid on the weekends really well. Wednesday night, I got to eat really, really well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I had to repair all my own instruments.
So, when did you actually start making guitars?
So I'd done all my repair for years.
Yeah.
And I'd done it for friends, and I'd do it for free because they were friends and I didn't really know what I was doing, right? About a decade ago, I started thinking, I really want to make my own acoustic instruments. So I had, anytime I was doing a repair, I would go to the forums, on the internet, which is such an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And this one name kept coming up. There were all the yahoos that said, oh, you repair it this way, which I knew that wasn't right. But one guy kept coming up and said, try this, try this. A guy named Sylvan Wells, who at that point was in Boston. And he's a teacher. So I finally ended up talking to him and emailing him directly. And then we started talking on the phone. He's a great guy and has this big personality. A professional musician that ended up, and I guess he is probably in his 70s now.
Have you ever met him in person?
Oh, I spent a week with him. That's how it all started. I met this guy and I was talking to him on the phone. And Mr. Wells, I got this problem. And he finally said, you need to come hang out at my shop. You just need to come hang out. And he said, now it's going to cost you.
What an opportunity.
So I spent a week with he and his wife. His shop is in his basement, but it's a massive shop.
Yeah.
Right? And we spent a week, 8 or 9 hours a day. And then when he got tired, he said, well, by tomorrow I want you to have this finished.
How long does it take to make one? I'm not talking about your hands-on hours, but just over the length of the time.
The wood shows up here. It sits for a couple of years, literally. It doesn't have to sit that long. I just like to let it sit that long. I probably have somebody asked me that the other day. Because I work on this as a hobby, as a passion, one night I may spend an hour, one day I may spend 6 if I have a day off and the kids are doing something else. So I bet somewhere between 40 and 90 hours in each instrument. But the process is fun. If the show is called Art with Ed, let me kind of give you some of the artistic background. Don't you love Art with Ed? I like some of the artistic background of this.
Okay.
Some of making instruments is mechanical. They have to play in tune. They have to be able to support the weight of the strings.
Yeah.
They have a certain ergonomic shape that you can actually play. The shape of the neck has to feel good in a person's hand, right?
Right.
But a lot of it is art. So if you, Ed, said, I'm a guitar player, I want you to make me an instrument, first we'd hang out, just like we're doing now. I'd say, Ed, tell me something in your life that is important to you. Could be art, could be a certain thing. You have built these great books on photographing waterways and creeks most recently, right?
Right.
So you would say, is there some way we can incorporate my love of these waterways into an instrument, right? And I'd say, well, I've got your book. Let's look through your book. And you could say, I love these colors in the trees. I love the way these rock formations look. So then you and I would hang out for, let's say, a couple of weeks on and off. So maybe we go to dinner and we just hang out and we talk, right?
Yeah.
One guy spent 3 hours. We hung out at a restaurant in Versailles for 3 hours, and the waitress was totally annoyed with us by the time we left. But I tipped her really well because we ended up talking, and we had a sketch pad, and I drew some stuff, and he drew some stuff. And from that, we say, your love of waterways and photography, how can we incorporate that in an instrument? All right, so the waterways, are there any woods that we could use, right? You love maple trees. So this instrument has maple leaves inlaid in it, right?
I see.
I love the colors
how
in
you're
fall
going.
in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Well, what woods can we use that have these different colors?
Wow.
What stains can we use?
So personalized.
Well, that's the idea, right? This is what is really fun for me. So every instrument is a one-off, as it were. Either because of the colors, I make them for people. These actually, this was one of the first ones I ever made, so this is mine. This one is a prototype. The other one, the gentleman I made for wanted maple leaves and a certain shape, a smaller body shape. I don't know if you can see this. We'll grab this one real quick. This is a smaller body shape, but this has maple leaves inlaid in it.
Yeah.
He loved that. His guitar, the whole back of it, is flame maple, which means it's really ornate wood. When you look at it, it looks very three-dimensional. This is Indian rosewood. So I made one of them, and I thought I'll make one for me too. So I made two of them at the same time. And if you put them next to each other, they are sisters. The leaves are in the same place, but they're slightly different woods. They're the same shape. The top is made out of the same woods. You see the maple inlays, and in the headstock also?
Yeah.
The top are the same woods, but the back and the sides are different. So every one is a one-off. And this one, I just liked his maple idea, so these are inlaid in the neck. And that's the fun for me. I get to know somebody, I get to use some kind of creative ability to figure out how I can take an instrument that has to meet certain criteria, but make it very personal. So this is an electric instrument. They have a different sound, they have a different use. I grew up playing electric guitars like this, solid bodies, right? This is a bass, so it has 4 string. Different. Now to give you the idea about this has an inlay in the neck. This is the symbol for mindfulness, right?
Oh,
mindfulness
really?
is a meditation thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this was important to me. I made this for me, actually. This is the first solid body I ever built. So this is the idea of mindfulness, is the idea of wherever you are trying to enjoy that moment. Like hanging out with you guys.
I don't
right?
think of mindfulness and electric guitar music together.
You know, that's a good point. What are you talking about? Okay, if music is living in the moment and playing something improv right out of your brain, right out of your gut, wherever it comes from, then mindfulness is being right there.
Okay.
If when I was playing a gig, I was thinking about the next root canal I have to do, it would be really bad. So you have to kind of live in that. So
well, sometimes we should sacrifice your music for the next root canal because we want it to be really good.
Okay, what I can promise you is in the dental chair, I'm thinking about...
You have mindfulness there.
Mindfulness there. I have to focus, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. There's a person staring up at me going, please don't let this hurt. And why aren't you finished yet? You know. So, but in the shop, it's just the opposite. In the shop, if it takes 60 hours, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, the piece of wood I can walk away from if it's not working, or if I cut something that I don't like because I'm not inspired by the shape we've designed, I start again. It's just a piece of wood. Now they're not inexpensive pieces of wood, but they're just wood. So all the machinist tools I make myself also. Some of the electric tools, the big tools you buy, but anything, the guitars are, you can buy kits, but if you want to do something very individual, you have to make all the parts to make the parts yourself, if that makes sense. Oh, it's fun. That's the great thing. So in my dental, well, one of the reasons to get into this is I love working with high tolerances. I obviously love working with my hands. It's what I do professionally. It's what I do here.
Right.
That has always been such a huge thing for me. I love the precision. I love saying, I need to take a thousandth of an inch off here and it'll fit better. That makes me very happy in a strange, geeky kind of way.
Yeah, that is pretty geeky.
It is pretty geeky. One of the great things about any kind of guitar or any kind of instrument is because no two pieces of wood are the same, no two instruments will ever sound exactly the same.
Right.
If I made 3 guitars exactly the same, they will not sound the same because of the inherent difference in how I kind of shape them, even if I'm trying to make them the same, and the difference in wood densities. One tree on a mountain next to another tree slightly lower on the mountain
Same species.
Different. It's going to be different. So what I promise people when I make these instruments is kind of what I said earlier. I can promise you it'll be pretty. I can promise you we'll play in tune. I can't promise you you're going to like the sound of it. And that's the difficulty in building. Now I have been lucky that I haven't made one yet that the person I've made it for hasn't liked it. Or at least they've been very nice to me. They haven't said in front of me they haven't liked it at least. If you've noticed, I've only made guitars. Never made a violin.
Right.
Never made a dulcimer. I've never made a mandolin. But I've only made instruments that I understand how they're supposed to feel and sound. Specifically because if I made a violin, I would have no idea really how a musician wants it to feel or really sound. Well, you and I know when we hear a great instrument played, right? Or a great musician play it. But it becomes very personal to the musician.
Oh, sure.
Right? I'm not going to make a violin unless I become a very good violinist, and that's never going to happen.
Right.
Right? So I'm sticking with guitars because I think I know the range of what professional guitar players want, or bass players. And if you were a professional guitar player, very quickly, you and I would speak the same language, and very quickly I could say, oh, you want 11th and 3/16 nut, or 1 3/4, or 1.75 nut, sure. And you want, we can talk this language that very quickly I can assimilate. You want a certain neck shape. I can get that. And I can play it, and I can say, oh, it needs more low end or more top end. I know that. I know that from my years of experience. Now, I may not always agree with you, but I know how to get that out of the instrument. If you said, I want you to make me a mandolin, I don't know what they're really supposed to feel like. I really don't speak that language.
Right. Yeah, I think, I would never want to make a guitar. However, that process of getting to know the person and finding out what their likes are and how to translate that into the piece of artwork, that to me would be really wonderful.
It is. That is my favorite part. That is really my favorite part. And then the next favorite part is to go to, I've been lucky, I've made a lot of instruments for professional musicians. Right. That play around Lexington or Louisville. And it is so fun for me to sit in the audience. Oh, yeah. And listen and see one of my instruments played. Right. Now the truth of the matter is, well, yes, I mean that's so great. Now the truth of the matter is, the musicians are great musicians, so they make my instruments sound great. Right?
Yeah, well, there's that too.
There is that too. But it is so satisfying to say, gosh, I remember when that was a block of wood sitting in my workshop, and now it's making this beautiful piece of music. Right. That makes me incredibly happy, actually.
you've been active in the arts in Frankfort more than just playing gigs for concerts. So why?
Well, because it's important. That's a great question. Because, so my history is I worked with the Frankfurt Arts Foundation for years. I was even president in 1 year. I've been on the board of the Grand for several years now, and the board is not just an administrative board. We actually run the theater, so it's very hands-on. I'm one of the tech guys, believe it or not. Yeah. So I'm backstage hoping everything works. That's one of my jobs. Yeah, playing is great. I do that because I love it. But the truth of the matter is, it seems to me that one of the things that makes a community, and I mean the group of people, I don't mean the buildings, is places and reasons people congregate. Music and the arts are this language that doesn't really get spoken. Doesn't have to be a language we all understand because we're cognizant of it. It brings people together. Think about it. People sitting in the Grand Theater, love the Grand Theater, people sitting in the Grand Theater or the Coffee Tree, which also has live acts quite often, right? Right, are right next to each other. They're experiencing something in real time, something they hear, something they see. It really brings people together. Thomas Jefferson even talked about the idea that we work so hard so that our kids can have the time to enjoy the arts. He thought that was unifying also.
Really?
That's and that has always been important to me. My wife is the same way. My wife has gone to great lengths to try to work with the arts. Her thing is dance as much as anything else, right? But she works with the Grand also, and the idea is it really makes a community a good place to live. It's not the buildings. It's not even the location.
Right.
The people that congregate at the Coffee Tree to see a show or just hang out outside talking. The people that plan an evening around dinner downtown and then the Grand, or go to Bourbon on Main to sit at the patio and listen to music. It is more than the food or the place of the location.
Right.
It is the arts that tend to bring us together.
And it brings people together of different cultures to help understand each other, because I think a lot of our problems in this country is that we come from so many different cultures, and we need to bridge that gap, and at the community level is the best place to start.
And a salsa band, a Latin kind of band. There's one playing at the Grand in a few months. You will, if you stood on stage and looked out at the Grand, there will be 10-year-olds there. There will be people of all different races there, of all different ages, and because salsa is such this energetic, danceable movie, I guarantee you everybody there, regardless of age, race, background, will be bobbing their head and dancing. And you're right. What other thing can you think of that can very easily, in a short span of time, bring that many people together?
Yeah.
How important is that really? Yeah. And you're right.
Really
on a national level, even more important.
I don't think that people in Frankfort and Franklin County realize how many artists are among them. And, and with this show, I'm hoping to do a little bit of education about the process of different art forms, but also to make people realize that we have a very rich arts community, and we can build more too.
Oh, for sure. No, yeah. I think we have the support system. I think people are willing to help financially, which is obviously a very important thing, obviously. We have people that are willing to support it just by being there, and the musicians themselves, and artists themselves, just all across the board, are fantastic. I'm really proud to live here just from an arts basis, for sure.
I'm so amazed that such a busy man finds the time to perform as a musician, make guitars, and actively support the arts in our community. not a photographer. Jeremy will
Well,
back
you're
me
a
up on
I've
that.
seen your work. What are you talking about?
I don't understand the technology. I just shoot and spin dials.
Just as an eye.
I don't even know what those, when I spin stuff around, I know what focus is. But then I'm spinning something around, and I know that if I want a close-up of a wildflower, I go all the way, this way. And if I want a landscape, I go all the way the other way.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ed's high-tech camera lessons. Please tell us, Ed, is it right or left you go when you want to zoom in?
I don't know.
I don't know. And when
You're getting back at me because you said I'm going to ask you questions.
That's right.